Alright guys, great and exciting news. We have another festival. Finally, it's not a Duelist Cup. Those suck because they're just kind of a waste of time. They're basically just the rank ladder, but now we actually have a real festival. It's exciting. Basically, you get to pick Fusion, Synchro, or Link, and you get to play those decks pure. So you either if you pick Fusion, Pure Fusion, and you get to play, I imagine, against these two. You can change your group as much as you want between these three groups. They all have loner decks. Some are decent, some are not decent. Some of these are a lot more difficult to do than others. Again, this is pure Fusion, pure Synchro, pure Link. Some decks are made to be pure, and then, of course, the ban list affects it very, very much. So let's go look at the best decks. But before we get to that, would you like to make your Master Duel experience a whole lot better?
Are you ready to take your Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Play experience to a new level? The Untapped GG Companion is here for you. Use the deck tracker to know exactly what cards you have in your deck, and to go over any cards you aren't familiar with yet by hovering over them. It instantly updates when you draw a card, and automatically hides if you check your extra deck or graveyard. This is the perfect tool to help you master a new deck. The Untapped GG Companion also lets you import decks directly into the game in seconds. Copy any YDK or YDKE deck string, create a new deck in-game, click the Start Auto Import button, and let us take the wheel. Once the duel is over, check your win rate on your personal stats page. Brag among your friends and share your decks so they can import them into the game too. Start your path to master today by downloading the Untapped GG Companion at ygom.untapped.gg.
Okay, so let's look at this deck first. This is Chimera, so we're going to look at the Fusion decks first. Fusion is by far the most difficult of the three to play pure, because generally speaking, you will be mixing it with Links and Synchros in some sort of way. Some of the best Fusion decks, like for example, Prank Kids, you need Links. Heroes, most variants, you need Links. Most decks, Thunder Dragons, you need some Links. Most, even Ancient Gear, you need the Link 2 monster. Like most decks need Links to some degree, so it is a little bit unfortunate that a Fusion kind of gets hit a little bit because of that. But one of the best Fusion decks that you've got here is Chimera. It isn't hit on the ban list basically at all. This is the Chimera deck that we're playing. We're playing basically a ton of hand traps and Chimera cards. Chimera is essentially a Fusion deck that uses Fiends and Illusion Monsters and Beasts, and you fuse those together to form a lot of Yugi Moto's cards, and it's a pretty good deck, honestly. You've got negates that come out of the graveyard. It can interact quite well. It is a little bit of a difficult deck to learn sometimes, but it is definitely a very strong deck to play. For sure, it's definitely something that you can get away with playing. Super Poly is another kind of issue in this thing, which is Super Poly is only at 1 in this format. Again, they went out of their way to overly hit Fusions, which already have a hard time playing pure as it stands. So Fusions, unfortunately, are double, triple hit on this ban list. Also, the best deck branded, the best Fusion deck ever is branded, and it's pretty hit on the ban list. You're missing a lot of things. Some cards that you really need are limited. Grassic Screeners banned. A lot of things for branded is just not in a very good state. So Chimera is probably going to be the best Fusion deck that you can possibly play. Next is Heroes. Heroes is another deck where, honestly, Heroes is a deck that you want to play with some Link monsters. You don't need a lot of Link monsters for Heroes. You honestly really only need one Link monster, maybe the Infernal guy sometimes, but for the most part you really only need a singular Link monster for Heroes. So it's a little unfortunate that they didn't hit the deck directly, but by not allowing Links in Fusion decks, it creates this situation where you basically have to rely a little bit more on the masked heroes and things like the Shining and cards of that sort. You have to kind of rely on it a little bit more. You have to play a much more pure version of the deck. You should probably throw in Fusion Destiny into this build. It's not in here. I forgot to put it in. But Fusion Destiny should definitely be in here because it just gives the deck a little bit more consistency. But this is pure Heroes, all Fusions, and nothing else. Generally, I'd say it's just okay. But it definitely has some weaknesses from not being able to go into the malicious package and things like that. Alright, now we are on the Link deck. So here we've got Evil Twins. I will do some honorable mentions too. Evil Twins is a pretty good overall deck. It goes from Cyberse to Fiend pretty easily, which is how you play the deck. It's a very consistent deck. There's a bunch of one-card starters. The amount of one-card starters in this deck is actually, honestly, kind of outrageous. The deck has a lot of one-card starters. It's very easy to learn, very easy to play. The game basically lets you loan this deck out for the regular ranked mode, essentially for free. So most people know how to play and play around it, which is quite good. Yeah, I would probably recommend this. Another honorable mentions real quick. While I was building this, I thought of Unchained. Unchained is another card I would say is probably quite decent. It's another deck that's like mostly pure, but you need a few Xseed monsters, but if you cut them, you can still play the regular Unchained stuff. I didn't include it in this list, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Next is Sky Strikers. This is a top 3 Link deck of all time, and it's recently gotten quite a bit of support. I wouldn't say that the new support is outrageously good, just because most of the new support is main deck monsters, and this deck needed... I don't think it really needed the main deck monsters. I think it just needed more good spell cards to use in the main deck, even though a lot of its spell cards are already quite good. And we got extra deck monsters essentially, and new main deck monsters. And I think that the new support was good. The extra deck monsters were cool, but really what this deck was lacking was better spell cards. But still, regardless, this is easily a top 3 pure Link deck of all time, if not the best pure Link deck of all time. Sky Strikers is definitely, if you're going the Link route, very heavy consideration from this deck. Has a decent matchup against Tenpai, and you can actually build this to go second, so that you can go second against Tenpai and then basically have a guaranteed win, because you can definitely OTK fairly easily. And since Tenpai doesn't have like Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres and things of that nature, you actually can you can OTK them pretty easily, because their boards are going to be underwhelming. But Sky Striker is definitely a deck worth considering for Links. Alright, next up we've got Salamangreats. This is another top 3 Link decks of all time. You are missing the Xseed monster. For some reason I'm just forgetting his name right now, but this is the Xseed monster. You're missing it for sure. It's the only thing that this deck is really missing, is just the Xseed monster that summons the Salamangreat monster from the deck. That is literally the only thing that you're missing, but honestly this deck 100% can be played without it. There are actually combo lines that don't even include the Xseed monster anyway. The Xseed monster is good. It's actually, what is it, Mirage Stallia, I just remembered it. It's a good card. It's definitely an inclusion in the main deck if you're playing it with outside of this festival. But I think it's still this is a very, very, very strong deck, even in this festival. Plus, it's got a lot of recent support too, which is quite good, like the Code of Soul and things of that nature. Salamangreat of Fire is also a very good card. So this deck recently got some awesome support. Also, we've got the Raging Phoenix, which is a little bit... this card's new too. It's quite good. And then you've got the older Phoenix too, the Pyro Phoenix, which you can use. But yeah, this deck has recently got some pretty cool support. You can mix in some of the stuff that I didn't include. This is another Salamangreat charge, if will. It has a lot of recursion. This deck, generally speaking, is very, very good. Probably a top 3 Link deck of all time. Alright, next up we've got the Synchro area. So right here we've got Synchrons. I put Synchrons in here because every other festival that they've had that has had Synchros in it, this deck has always been banned or heavily limited. So I thought it was quite cool that you could finally play it. Now remember, you're playing it completely pure. Also, Max C is banned, which actually does hurt this deck, because Max C, if you didn't know, is actually like a combo starter in this deck, because you can discard Max C and then bring it back with Junk Synchron. So you can bring back, you can activate Max C, bring it back with Junk Synchron, and you have a pretty good combo going on there. But this is the deck without it, because obviously Max C is banned. You could definitely work this out a little bit better, make this deck a little bit more consistent, and probably build a little bit more of a consistent build. I just kind of put everything into a pile here and put in the cards that I thought. But if there's something that I would need to change about this deck, like Stardust Illumination, you could probably cut. You don't need to play 3 of this, but you could definitely shift this deck around a little bit and put a couple more hand traps and things like that. But I think this is finally the opportunity to actually play Synchrons. And yeah, the deck is rather good, even though Maxi unfortunately didn't make it. Next deck is Resonator and Centurion. Both of these decks are quite good for the festival. Centurion is hit a little bit on the ban list, so I included it as kind of a small engine in the Resonator deck. Both of these decks, like I said, are very good for this festival. They're both essentially pure, what are they called? They're basically both pure Synchro decks, so you don't have to stress about You don't really have to stress about any of the mixing with other summoning mechanics because they are pretty much both pure decks. Like I said, Centurion is a very, very strong synchro deck, and if it hadn't gotten hit, it probably would have been the best deck in the entire festival, honestly, if it hadn't gotten hit. But I could say the same thing about Branded, technically. I could say that about a number of decks. So yeah, the Centurion package got hit just a little tad bit. So with that package getting hit a little bit, I think either one of these, Resonator or pure Centurion, I think either one of these can be classified as very, very strong decks. They're very consistent, both of them. Centurion's is outrageously consistent deck. So either way, even if you want to play either of these archetypes pure, they're both very, very good. All right, last and not least, because it probably will be one of the best decks in the entire thing, is Tenpai. I know some of you are sick of Tenpai because it's already on the ladder, and by playing Tenpai here, it's just, it's basically you're going to be playing the same deck you've already been playing against. But this deck is very, very, very strong. I can't deny it. It's one of the only decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! That wants to go second and successfully goes second. I mean, this deck is really, really, really good at going second. You lose your link monsters, so some of your first turn plays are a little bit turned off, like the... I don't know, what's a play that you would typically make? Like make a Heretic Seal of Heavenly Spheres, like stuff like that is turned off. But at the same time, most of the time you just go second. Whether you win the coin flip or lose the coin flip, most opponents will make you go second, especially if they're not playing Tenpai themselves. And when you play this deck, as long as you have board breakers and you can essentially just get most of your summons off your like Chandra off or your Pydra off, as long as you can get that first attack through, you pretty much win the game with this deck. It's absolutely outrageous. The field spell is at 1, and so is the Sangan Kaiman. Both of these cards are at 1, so the deck is hit to a certain degree, but it's not hit outrageously, because you still have this, it's searchable, you still have this, it's searchable, you still have all these board breakers, you have all these hand traps, you have all of this stuff to slow down the game, break boards. The deck still very much can win. It does make it a little less consistent, especially in Pot of Prosperity's gone too, so again, consistency is definitely hit, but this is definitely going to be one of the top decks in the entire thing. It is a very, very strong deck. Now, this is the end of the video. If there's any deck that I forgot, please mention it down below, because obviously I make these the day the thing gets announced, so sometimes little things can slip through the cracks and I can forget certain decks. But if there's something that I forgot, Fusion, Link, or Synchro, please let me know in the comment section down below, and thank you for watching.